This is a message from our sponsor. I'd like to introduce you to Publica by IAS, the award-winning CTV ad server trusted by some of the biggest streaming services and smart TV manufacturers globally. Publica helps a growing number of leading AVOD and FAST services to power their programmatic ad break decisioning via products including a unified auction, server-side ad insertion, and a demand-agnostic ad server built from the ground up around streaming. Head to getpublica.com to find out how they help CTV publishers to grow their advertising revenues and provide streaming audiences with linear-like TV ad break experiences.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. I'm Eric Franchi from Imperium Ventures. Joining us this week, we have Jon Carpenter, the CEO of Comscore, and my co-host, Ari. Ari has been called a few things in his career: the ad tech influencer. I know him as the Prince of Programmatic. I've heard him referred to as the Count of CTV. But this week, we've got a new name, Ari Papari. Welcome, Ari.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the new name, Ari Papari. It hasn't been hard enough to have this many vowels in my name my entire life. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, there was an Ad Exchanger article that referred to me that way. And they ironically called me the person who needed no introduction and then misspelled my name. So I'm being razzed by the entire community.
We'll get into this more later.
We'll get into this in a bit. We have a great show. So Jon's here to talk about the JIC and Comscore and connected TV and all sorts of really interesting stuff around measurement. We have Justify Your Existence with Aderize, which is a white-labeled rich media service. It's very interesting. A bunch of former colleagues of mine for DoubleClick. We also have sort of a call for advertisers. So I want to remind those who are listening that we are supported by advertising. You may have just heard an ad before this podcast. And we've recently joined forces with AdTech God, which also has a very popular podcast, and we're selling the ads for them. So like Eric Seufert likes to say, everything is an ad network, and so is Marketecture. So if you're interested in advertising on any of these podcasts, just give me an email, Ari@Marketecture TV, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I will set you up. Last thing, we're not going to make a big political comment here. We're just going to say that, our thoughts are with all of our Israeli friends. There's so many Israeli ad tech companies after the horrific attacks in Gaza. So we're feeling for you. And if there's anything we can do, please let us know. All right. With that, Jon, thank you for being here. You're the CEO of Comscore. I'm sure you have a lot to say.
Well, thanks a lot for having me this morning, guys. I really appreciate it. I look forward to the discussion. I don't profess to have the nicknames yet in the industry, but maybe someday.
Maybe someday. So everyone knows Comscore, but does everyone know it? It's evolved so much from back in the day where it was sort of the default measurement system for digital. So what is Comscore nowadays?
Yeah, sure. It's a question we get a lot here, especially in my tenure over the last 15 months. Look, we're of course an audience measurement company, but we consider ourselves a bit more than that in terms of who we are as a data and technology platform. We see ourselves fundamentally as really one of the few companies, I'd argue, that could and can help solve some of the complex problems that many of our clients in this industry is facing in terms of next gen measurement. And I can say we're the second oldest here in terms of the true kind of measurement OGs. Over the years, we've been a trusted currency across digital and in a lot of ways the traditional media business for, well over 20 years now. And we, under my watch, continue to build on that original digital lineage and the traditional TV lineage that came with the Rentrak acquisition here with a set of data assets that span now both digital and traditional media.
Right. So should people think of you as measurement for digital and measurement for sort of TV and its various offshoots, connected TV, et cetera? Is that the easiest way to get your arms around what your current product lines are?
That's accurate. And I would echo the combination of those two things uniquely positions us for what the market is asking for in terms of cross-platform audience measurement.
Right. So what's your view of the future of measurement? Is it going to be ultimately a single currency, multi-currency, hybrid currencies, or something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we view this, at least my view is it'll be multi-currency, right? The digital ecosystem has always operated on multi-currencies. I think that's fundamentally where TV is happening. But I think TV is headed. But I think maybe to take a step back in order to really kind of wrap your arms around where this is all headed from my perspective, I think looking at what's taking place in the industry in terms of the challenges that are spread across this industry, everything from the fact that we as consumers are a heck of a lot more connected than we've ever been before. We almost have unlimited optionality in terms of what we can consume really across mobile, CTV, and traditional video, if you will. That's certainly one massive challenge that the industry is grappling with. I think the other big one that we're right in the middle of, given our digital presence, is the deprecation of third-party cookies and the proliferation of signal loss across the digital ecosystem. That has impacted publishers, especially in the mid and long tail, in some pretty significant ways, especially those that rely on open market programmatic for the bulk of their revenue. That signal loss problem is not insignificant. And the combination of signal loss plus the fragmentation of consumer media behavior are a couple of big problems that we see ourselves as Comscore uniquely solving. Both of them create in and of themselves a tremendous amount of waste, and by any estimate, somewhere tens of billions. So we see this as multi-currency, but I think that the future here has got to be based on, one, big data innovation. You hear a lot about that in the marketplace today, given the fragmentation, the notion that single source panels can continue to solve the complexities in today's environment just doesn't hold up. So you've got to have big data. It's got to be unified and cross screen, right? Advertisers really need one unified view of audiences and outcomes across all devices. And that's got to span from local to national, and local gets underplayed oftentimes in the narrative that's out there in the ecosystem. But from my perspective, really since the pandemic, our worlds have become more hyper-local than they've ever been before. And the granularity and representativeness of the Comscore data set is one that starts with kind of the local at the foundation, coupled with that digital piece. So it's got to be unified and cross-screen. And then privacy, right? There's privacy is a consumer right. We've done a lot of innovation in this space over the years. The solution got to have privacy wrapped around everything that we do. And then finally, you can't be anything and everything to everybody. You've got to be interoperable in terms of how our clients are using various solutions to solve some of the problems that they're dealing with. So a bit of a long-winded answer there.
Well, let me dive in on a couple of things you said. So you said the future is multi-currency, but then you said, well, advertisers want a single view across platforms. Wouldn't advertisers be better off with a single currency?
Yeah, it's in terms of scoring the actual media. Perhaps I think if you look at the digital ecosystem, it's thrived in a multi-measurement environment for years. I fundamentally believe that's where we're headed with digital. With traditional TV. You look at the number of players that are in this ecosystem that are doing everything from audience measurement to brand safety to outcome-related measurement. Those all have big roles to play for our clients. For Comscore, we don't have to own all those gas stations. Our data and assets can fuel and be interoperable with those solutions to help clients round out things that help them go beyond just standard reach and frequency.
So how does the other thing that struck me about your introduction was your comment about publishers suffering from the lack of cookies, and that definitely makes sense as we move into this world without cookies. But how does Comscore help with that?
So great question. I think with that deprecation across the ecosystem, we're really focused on advancing our digital measurement approach, which is really powered by fundamentally a completely new methodology around privacy preserving unified digital measurement. Our original Comscore digital product the methodology was based off of a unified digital measurement. We've updated that to operate on first party signals instead of third party signals, and so it provides a tremendous benefit to the publisher ecosystem in allowing them to surface their audiences in ways that allow them to work around, if you will, the signal loss that we're all dealing with.
So publishers are putting your tags on their page
That's
and
right.
it's giving you signals, and then you're combining that with your panel, which is, an installed piece of software on people's machines.
That's right.
Right. So cross channel, how do you then take all of that data and tie it to someone's living room behavior in CTV or otherwise?
Yeah, look, our methodology fundamentally starts at the household level. We're ingesting, hundreds of millions, in the case of digital, billions of, call them, transactions on a daily basis. And we start at the household level. We now have insight into the individuals in those households. And we build our methodology from the ground floor up. So we start at the household. That scales to all roughly 42,000 zip codes across the US marketplace, that then ladders to all 210 demos and rolls up to a national view of what's going on. And so we're really the only company that can say that we've got the foundation that starts at the household and ladders up in one consistent methodology. And then through a unified ID, we're able to link our digital data with our TV audience viewing data to help provide clients with a view of true incremental reach and
And
frequency.
when you say start to the household, is that the legacy of the Rentrack acquisition, which had pretty large amounts of data from set-top box?
Yeah, and it's only grown from there. Our digital assets have expanded. We've got visibility through all of our set-top box relationships. We're integrated with, tens of thousands of publishers across the media ecosystem. And then we've
Right.
got probably one of the largest, if not the largest, digital panel that we calibrate our big data set against. And then we've got our total home panel, which gives us an install base of roughly 7,500 households, where we're able to kind of get a picture of what's going on in the household that we use to calibrate our big data sets against.
And the local focus, that's a little bit of a jab at Nielsen, right? Which lost its MRC accreditation for local. And until recently, we still had people like writing down what TV shows they were watching.
Yeah, look, we think the superiority of our local measurement product is unmatched. We know that the stability, we're measuring 1 in 3 households. The incumbent panel measurement capability, you're talking about 1 in roughly every 2,000 households. And so when you start to think about the stability and reliability of a measurement platform that's built off of big data, what that does to help sales teams eliminate waste, help them think more creatively about audience insights and how to plan their sales efforts, the reliability of that data set is just so much superior.
John, I was, sort of like doing a little bit of way back research in preparation for this. And when I think of Comscore, sometimes the first thing that comes to mind is the rankings. So it's long been, a thing that some of the scaled digital properties can boast, like we're at Comscore top 200, Comscore top 250, and that's extended now to basically everything, which is great. The foundation of this was the Jupiter Media Metrics acquisition in 2000, and like the depths of the bear for $1.5 million. So I mean, the ROI on that, has got to be, pretty insane. How much of the sort of rankings still plays into, why customers use Comscore, and do they use it for planning, or sort of like what's the state of the whole rankings biz?
Yeah, many of our clients still leverage exactly what you're talking about in terms of our rankings of publisher websites around the globe. Again, it's a global footprint that we take. Media metrics is still the foundation of our digital assets, and we've scaled off of that to build out, our predictive audience activation business that really it's been around for a little while, but has taken us a bit of time to scale it, but is now getting, pretty extensive scale. And that's built off of the foundation of our digital asset coupled with our TV assets. And so that old media metrics business that you referenced, the company buying it for, essentially a song back in the early days, is continuing to pay massive dividends. And it gives us a foothold into just about every single major brand and every agency holdco in the media ecosystem.
Yeah, and that data in media metrics was the I don't want to say the currency, but it was the most important data for buying digital before programmatic.
Yeah.
Because before programmatic, you were effectively buying sites, and you had to, as a media planner, figure out which sites correlated with the data you cared about. But programmatic came, and the naive point of view is that that all went away. And now we just buy the actual people, the actual audience users that we want. We don't need a ranking and rating of sites. Would you dispute that?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And certainly the rise of programmatic changed that original business model quite a bit. Given the proliferation of signal loss across the environment today, I would posit that our digital business, our digital assets are more important today than perhaps they've ever been before in terms of allowing especially the mid and long tail publisher ecosystem who rely heavily on programmatic, open market, programmatic, cookie based revenue. We've got statistics that suggest that top line hit just on signal loss is upwards of 60% deprecation to signal loss and significant revenue declines. Our digital product, because our tag sits on the site and we can surface first party data, we become incredibly valuable to these, not just the publishers, but the demand side ecosystem who are also struggling to get scale in the absence of cookies on their platforms, can now ride along in our tagging container so we can surface audiences that are now verifiable. You can identify who the audience is, the demos, and the publisher ecosystem benefits in that because they're able to get credit for advertising that was somewhat obfuscated given the signal loss that now is more visible, and we can stitch back together that linkage between the buy side and the sell side. So we're incredibly bullish on the opportunity in front of us for the digital business, given what's going on with signal loss alone.
Let's talk about TV. So the JIC is it pronounced JIC, GIC, JICE. The JIC. What is the JIC, and what's going on, and what's your involvement?
Yeah, very topical. The JIC, from my perspective, and I don't think this is a secret, it is really about trying to bring the buy side and the sell side together here to help advance what I talked about at the top, which is this notion of how do we start to measure accurately all the fragmentation that's going on across the platforms. And so with the shifts in consumption from traditional TV to streaming, I think what the JIC has realized is that in order to facilitate a standard measurement of sorts, they need to come together and bring their first party data as it relates to all the streaming behavior and bring that and make that available, if you will, again, in a privacy forward way to all the measurement partners so that all this stuff can be accurately measured, right? Look, I mean, all of these companies who have stood up D2C business models are losing hundreds of millions of dollars. And so the notion that traditional measurement can help solve that is just not a reality. And so I think this is a massive effort to kind of bring that together and provide measurement companies with an accurate view of what's going on across the streaming platforms so that those companies can start to get credit, appropriate credit, for the audiences that are vastly moving to those.
But what's the expected output of the JIC? Usually a JIC outside the U.S., it picks a vendor and it says for the next 2 years we're all agreeing we're going to use this vendor for this medium, and that actually makes a lot of efficiency gains because everyone agrees on the currency. Generally, I think the conventional wisdom is that this JIC is not going to do that. It's going to maybe pick many vendors or many methodologies. Could you give us a little bit more of the inside view of what the JIC is doing and what the output's likely to be?
Yeah, so we've gone through a certification process. I think all the major measurement players, with the exception of Nielsen, have signed on to be a part of the JIC process. And, they're putting us through a certification process of sorts. And you saw an announcement, or maybe you didn't, but there was an announcement, a week or so ago, where we got the results of the initial evaluation from the JIC members on our submissions, and they certified Comscore as well as 2 additional measurement companies.
Right. And so they're certifying you. Why is this different from the MRC? Why do we need the JIC if we have the MRC, whose goal is to certify the counting methodologies?
Yeah, look, I think the JIC has been clear that as part of getting certification overall, I think they've been public about the companies needing to be in the MRC process as well and going through that. We've been very vocal at Comscore in our support of the MRC and what it does for the industry in terms of providing transparency into the measurement products that are being used to score effectively billions of dollars of advertising. We're the only measurement company that was conditionally certified that is also currently undergoing an MRC accreditation for our audience measurement product. And we see that as a key differentiator here. But the JIC has been supportive of players like us participating with the MRC and recognize the importance of it.
Right. So a cynical view would be that everyone wants to replace Nielsen, but the JIC is not able to recommend one company to replace Nielsen. Am I totally off base, or is that a cynical view that has some weight to it?
Yeah, look, I'm not in the camp that Nielsen goes away, right? Nielsen will continue to command, a certain percentage of the transactions that take place here. But I think fundamentally the offering as it stands today is limited in what it can do to help solve some of the problems that I talked about at the top that our clients are asking for us to help solve. And that gets back to, look, everybody's talking about big data and big data solutions, and Comscore from day one has kind of been the OG on big data methodology. And I kind of look at it and say, look, are we trying to be like them, or are they trying to be like us? And I like the position that we're in terms of what we've built and the product that we have in market.
Yeah, I briefly worked at Nielsen, and it was very unpleasant.
Well, we have that in common, Harley. Although I don't know that our time at Nielsen together overlapped.
No, it didn't. But I will say the one thing is I had the nicest office I will ever have in my entire career. It had a refrigerator in it. Like I'm never going to have that level of lux again. So one last question on this. So what does the world look like if you have 3 or 4 vendors that are all like JIC and MRC certified to do TV measurement cross screen? Does a marketer, does the CMO pick one and say, hey, we're a Comscore shop or we're a video amp shop and we want to use it for everything? Is that the dynamic, or is it like different use cases for different campaigns and different objectives?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter than the former here on that. I think there's players like the ones that you mentioned that serve unique aspects of the digital environment. What I'll say is, if we're talking about solving cross-screen measurement, you've got to have big data at scale, and you've got to have digital, and you've got to have local granularity. If you think about at the end of the day, where outcomes happen, they happen locally. They happen at the household level. If you're a national advertiser, I don't care who you are, your goal is to get somebody into your storefront locally or online to your property. And that's where I think the Comscore data assets significantly are differentiated from some of the players that just don't have the scale at the granular enough level to help clients truly solve for cross-screen. And so we're feeling pretty good about how we're positioned given the assets that we have under the hood of this thing.
Got it. So I want to ask one last question before we take a break. So your background, you're from a finance background, which is interesting. Usually it's measurement kind of people who are running measurement companies. Also, I have to ask, Comscore has this sort of tortured history over the last decade. So how do those things come together? Are you like the steady hand on the wheel who is, less likely to end up with a prison sentence than other folks? Is there, how are we moving forward here?
Yeah, look, hopefully you don't hold my finance background against me. Your audience doesn't hold my finance background against me. I've been pretty lucky in my career and have had a chance to work alongside some really talented and amazing leaders that helped me get to where I am today. You referenced some of the history here at Comscore. Look, we serve the media industry, and there's always a press release that comes out, or there's always some noise in the market. We try very hard here at Comscore to not get caught up in that. We try to control what we can directly control. And there's no doubt that this company has had its fits and starts. But we're firing on all cylinders here over the course of the last 15 months, and especially through the first, call it 9 months of this year. And we're intently focused on delivering solutions that are going to help our clients address the challenges that plague their businesses day to day. And we're not perfect. We don't profess to be, but we wake up every day trying to get a little bit better than we were the day before. And as you guys all know, you do that day after day, week after week, things start to happen. And it's always bumpy, but I like bumpy and up to the right, and I'll take that every day.
All right, you heard it here first. Let's take a quick break and talk about the news of the week with lots of financing news. Marketecture is brought to you by Pontiac Intelligence. Pontiac Intelligence is a demand-side platform designed for running high-quality CTV campaigns. With its proprietary bidder and a focus on privacy-safe era, Pontiac brings clear and powerful differentiation from the crowded DSP space. Transparent, low-tech fees, accurate forecasting, and the ability to manage thousands of simultaneous campaigns with ease. See a demo and learn more at pontiac.media. That's pontiac.media. All right, we're back. So, Eric, one of your portfolio companies, and actually I'm an investor as well, Sincera, made some news. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yep. Well, the big news was Ari Papari.
All right.
Yeah. So Sincera, it is a metadata company. It's got this pretty innovative way to crawl the web and get aggregate data on ad tech. And they've built a business that allows ad tech companies like ID5 and Trade Desk and LiveRamp and others to sort of use that data to understand what's going on in the market and build products better and faster. In the article in Ad Exchanger, and we should put in the show notes for everybody to check it out. Hopefully that they have not corrected your name. It was sort of referred to in the beginning as Moat 2.0, which the company has since moved past, but it's a little bit of Moat early days in that it's incredible data that can be used by ad tech companies first and foremost to drive innovation. Super talented team, Mike and Ian. They are product leaders, and it's also interesting from a financing perspective from a couple of angles. Number one, price rounds are a little bit less frequent these days, and it was a price round with a proper lead. That lead was NextView, which was a seed investor in Triple Lift, so have a good experience in the space and good outcomes in the space. And then Aperion was an investor, TD7 was an investor, LiveRamp was an investor, Jonah. A whole bunch of folks that are ad tech natives. So I think it's a super interesting business, and from a number of sort of strategic angles. What's your take?
It's interesting because it's a data business, but it absolutely does not touch user data at all. There's no privacy issues whatsoever. It's a sort of a dictionary almost of what's going on in the ad tech world. And from my experience at Beeswax, for example, so many of those data sets had to be reproduced from scratch by every participant in the ad tech ecosystem. So I think it's pretty interesting. It's a very interesting data set. John, are you familiar with Sincera? Has it crossed your path?
I am not, but you guys have got me intently interested based on what I just heard.
All right, we're doing some business development here on the podcast. The other news just came out this morning is that Brian O'Kelly's Scope3 raised $20 million on a $100 million valuation. That's a Wall Street Journal article on that, led by Google Ventures and Venrock. So I don't think this is super surprising given that they've positioned themselves, I can't speak for the actual results, but they've positioned themselves as the definitive source of carbon information in the ad tech ecosystem. And if you imagine that becomes more and more important to advertisers and publishers, you could imagine that becoming a pretty big business where they take sort of a VIG on the transactions to make them more carbon neutral. John, I'll throw it to you for a moment. What's your thought on carbon in ad tech, or carbon as a measurement dimension here?
Yeah, not an area that we play in, although clearly getting a lot of attention. It'll be interesting to see how this evolves and how companies lean in terms of funding the growth of some of these companies that are clearly focused on driving measurement around some pretty important topics. A little bit outside of center of bullseye for us, but certainly worth us following.
Yeah, there's sort of this history where the core audience companies like Nielsen and Comscore are great at what they do, and then there's innovation that happens from small companies measuring new things, and then eventually maybe they get acquired or get put into the tags and otherwise give advertiser a more complete view.
Yeah, I think that's right, and not surprised that it's something that is sort of on the radar, but not really being operationalized yet by Comscore with what John said. It's an early stage company, even though it was a big raise at a I think high valuation just in terms of sort of like the overall number. No insight into what their revenue is, and if it was sort of kind of a high multiple. This is an investment for 5 to 10 years from now, right? From the
Yeah.
GV and Venrock perspective, I think thing one. Thing two is it's kind of interesting that GV was one of the leads in the round because they're not investing for Google, Alphabet per se, but they can bring a lot of resources and a lot of coordination, with the connection to Google, obviously. So I thought that was the pretty interesting thing. And obviously you
Yeah.
can't bet against anything that Bach does.
Yeah, like a little inside baseball. So Venrock was the largest early stage investor in AppNexus, and Scope3 was spun out of Brian O'Kelly's previous startup. So I think they sort of split the baby on their initial seed round. So the capitalization makes sense that they would need some additional funding.
It
Yeah.
is encouraging to see that there's still money in the marketplace, chasing smart, creative ideas and companies that for sure are going to help shape a bit of the future here down the road. So encouraged by the dollars here. Again, not clear on the revenue, but the valuation. Certainly encouraged to see the funds flow.
If you want to hear more on this subject, just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we interviewed Amy Williams at Good Loop, which is a competitor to Scope3, and she did an excellent job of sort of explaining the whole landscape for both carbon and ESG advertising.
And you're right. There's a
Great.
landscape emerging, and I think a funding like this is going to start to accelerate perhaps some more startups.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Eric, you wanted to talk a little bit about OpenRTB standards in retail media. I think Kevel has been pushing that, which is a
Yeah,
company of yours.
the article again we should put in the show notes from Ad Exchanger. James Hircher, who's been like all over the retail media and commerce space, did a good write up. Kevel, who's a portfolio company of ours, is spearheading, not leading, an initiative to create OpenRTB standards for sponsored listings, which is not counter to any IAB efforts. This is just a consortium of companies and includes the programmatic leaders as well as the sort of key scaled retail media platforms to just cooperate, move faster, and then ultimately have this be an open RTB standard. I mean, for the industry to, I think, achieve the revenue targets that everybody's putting against retail media, one of the key things is going to be standardization around sponsored listings and how to scale things using all of the sort of like disparate data across the open web. So it's kind of wonky, but it's like so important, at least from my perspective.
It's really important because product listings, sponsored listings are totally non-standard. The only way to buy them is to log into the walled garden your retailer chooses. And maybe that's okay for brands that are very concentrated on certain retailers. But if you ever want a non-endemic ad, like a Progressive insurance ad, to have an opportunity to buy that space, you're going to need RTB support. So it'll be very interesting to watch that. One topic that caught my eye that I'll just talk about is, and a lot of the content for this podcast, honestly, is just me explaining people's complex tweets. So there was this little back and forth with Alex Cohen, who's involved with the sandbox at Google. I think he's the product manager for it. That the Topics API, which is the kind of profiling of users in an anonymous way, is not going to be opt out in Europe. So most of the other sandbox technologies are opt out, meaning your Chrome gets updated and your browser is enrolled in them and you can turn it off. But Topics in Europe is going to be opt in because that's how the regulations are flying, which actually makes it probably pretty useless. I really don't think many users are going to click like, yes, please track me with my browser in Europe. The other, just a clarification, was that the other sandbox technologies, like the ones for conversion attribution and for sort of ad serving, are going to be opt out in Europe. Just like
What does this mean for European targeted advertising?
Well, there's a lot of controversy about how useful Topics actually is going to be to publishers. So the way Topics works is basically, as a publisher, you put some tag on your page, and that allows you to read the user's topics from the browser and then target ads to them. And it's sort of a replacement for third-party data in some sense. So publishers, I think, are counting on that for generating some level of revenue or additional uplift in their CPMs. And if it's opt-in Europe, it's probably basically just not going to be effective in Europe. So it's another kind of difficulty for publishers.
Hard to quantify, but doesn't look good.
Yeah, I mean, look, if publishers can now only maintain first-party cookies on opt-ins, it's certainly going to limit, data collection and their ability to monetize their inventory. I'll take a minute to selfishly plug our predictive audience product, which is a big alternative to the topics product. The move here is definitely a blow to pubs that had planned on using topics as a telemetry, if you will, for in the absence of third-party cookies.
Yeah, topics is really a hot topic with publishers. Some publishers, like, you get crazy people out there, and some people are like, this is just a way for Google to steal my data and enrich themselves. And then other folks are kind of counting on some of these technologies. It's really fuzzy. No one knows what's going to happen in 20. Last news, so Paramount added iSpot TV as an additional measurement partner, joining Comscore and VideoAmp. I just thought this was a good topic to bring up with Jon here, so we can kind of get that perspective. Jon, do you think all the major media companies are just going to have multiple approved vendors so that they can have the flexibility? Is ultimately they're going to be the same 3 or 4 as options with every one of these big media companies, or is it going to shake out at some point?
Yeah, I think certainly in the short term, what you're seeing here is, on the heels of the conditional JIC certification, of which Paramount is obviously part of the JIC. Paramount and others obviously keenly interested in making sure that they can work across all of us, Comscore and the other two. And so I think that's what you saw in the announcement there with Paramount, just announcing that they can now operate on essentially all the conditionally certified measurement providers. How this shakes out over time remains to be seen. At some point, there's not enough traditional TAM, if you will, for there to be room for a handful of us here. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was continued consolidation. You already saw some consolidation with iSpot and 605 recently. I don't expect that will be the end of it.
Yeah, people don't realize how expensive it is to run these services. The data expense, the panels, everything.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool to see how aggressive the competitive set is getting. iSpot is now making headlines. Feels like, weekly. VideoAmp had that big $180 million raise. There's definitely shifts happening in the space. So, obviously love to see it from a competitive standpoint.
Certainly helps spur innovation and keeps us moving quickly, for sure.
All right, well, let's call it then. So, Jon, CEO of Comscore, thank you so much for being here.
Really appreciate the discussion, guys. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks,
Eric,
Jon.
always a pleasure. This is Ari Papari signing off. Please continue listening for Justify Your Existence with Aderize. My good friend Adrian D'Souza will explain why rich media can be white labeled. And thank you, everyone. Welcome to Marketecture's Justify Your Existence, where we ask early-stage ad tech and martech startups to tell us why we should care about what they're building. Today we have my old friend Adrian D'Souza here. So Adrian, what's your company called?
Our company's called Aderize.
Aderize. And when was it founded? How big is it? And what funding have you taken?
It was founded mid last year, in mid 2022. And we haven't taken any funding at all. It's entirely self-funded, and we're growing and profitable.
Exciting. How many employees?
I don't like to disclose it, but definitely under 50.
Under 50.
employees.
Okay, that's a
Yes.
qualification to be on this segment, so we'll say you qualify. All right, what do you do?
So I'm the CEO of Aderize.
Yeah.
And
What does Aderize do?
Great. Aderize is a white label bundle solution of creative services and ad serving. And we provide these services across video and display across multiple medium.
Okay, so white labeled creative services. So is this who do you sell to? Is it a publisher product?
It is a product that we sell to publishers, agencies, and DSPs,
Right.
where effectively we're giving those organizations another thing to sell, another product line to sell, except it's white labeled, so they basically can go to market and say, hey, we have creative services, and we can do beautiful creative for you. And we are the team behind the scenes delivering against that.
Okay, and to what extent do you have proprietary formats or other tech that enables that?
We have a bunch of proprietary things. So we have unique formats in the 3D space. I would say one of the other unique things about us is that we have proprietary technology that does compression without compromising on the quality of creative. And so we typically, one of the founding principles of our company was being green. And so we're carbon neutral and our entire stack works on renewable energy. But as I said, our file sizes are around 50% of typically what the competition renders at.
I'm picturing you like with a bunch of programmers sitting above a waterfall, just like getting the hydroelectric energy to power your ads. All right, so 3D formats and video formats. Is it fair to characterize that the main use case for your product would be high-end branded stuff?
It's high. Well, here's the interesting thing, right? People associate brand with lack of engagement and lack of responses. Okay. We build beautiful creative. Right. And so we see applications all the time in the direct response space too, because you know what? Our creatives are light, they are beautiful, and so as a result, they perform really well. And so while, yes, I think you look at any of our formats and you'll say, oh yeah, that must be branding, it actually performs really well. For example, we do a lot of business in the entertainment sector with movie studios for launches and things like that, driving folks to basically, the nearest theater or things like that. And part of it is just the formats, while light, are very engaging. And so
right. Go ahead. Back when I was in the rich media business, the movie studios were movie studios, automotive, and like gaming were three of the biggest sectors because they really wanted good-looking, video-heavy creatives.
Yeah, and that's the one difference, right? You asked, what's my reason for existence? It's precisely because we're trying to be the anti-rich media companies of the past, heavy creative,
right?
We're very light. I think at times publishers used to hate those creatives because it used to be heavy, and marketers sort of scratch their head saying it is really, really difficult to deal, it takes a lot of time and resources. We are fully managed services, and so we take on all the heavy lifting. And because our ads perform really well, it has a great, while we're all about the consumer and building great creative, it translates into all kinds of goodness for marketers because it delivers superior performance, and publishers because the ads work great and it enhances the consumer experience.
Right. So I just want to make sure we all understand what it is. So let's say I'm a publisher and I want to offer a new product that's like some really cool ad, and I'm small. What you enable me to do as a publisher is to go to my potential customers who want to buy direct ads and say, we're going to create a really cool ad for you, and it's in our format that looks nice, and you don't have to do anything. Just give us the assets and we'll make it happen.
That's absolutely right. I'd just say a couple of tweaks to what you just said. Yeah. One is that very often if we don't even get the assets, we can scrape content off the web as a starting point and deliver an initial mock. And that's what wows the customer and says, wait a minute, you're doing something better than what my own resources can do. I want more of that. Secondly, we not only do all that, but we've actually got playbooks designed, including like videos to train the sales team and kind of like detailed process flows. And it's an ops company. And so we try to make it really easy to onboard our partners without them having to worry about go-to-market efforts.
How do you charge?
We charge on a CPM basis primarily. We have another model that includes a charge for creative services and ad serving. The ad serving at that point is less, but that's primarily when the volumes are very low. But as long as the volumes justify it, we believe we should partner with any of the sales teams and take on the risk. So when we're delivering mocks and we're delivering stuff, it's only when you win the business that we start getting paid.
Right.
But that's part of why we built the company. We believe, like at the end of the day, we are going to get a lot of recurring business, and we do, because of how easy we are to deal with, as well as that we deliver superior performance and beautiful creative. And so that's the reason why people do business with us. We're easy to do business with.
Sure. Sounds great. Sounds much better than the rich media business.
We're trying to transform it. Yes.
Last question. If your company was an animal, what animal would it be?
That's an interesting one. I would say the cheetah.
Cheetah. Okay. Why?
Fast. Recently, one of the execs at one of our partners shot a note. I know him personally. He said, "Hey, how are things going? It's been I think it's now around 8 months since I joined Aderize." And he's like, "How are things going?" And I sent him a note. Basically, I wanted to give him a detailed status of everything that's going. But we are extremely nimble, and so we can do great things in a short amount of time because, and you'll appreciate this being a startup founder yourself, no bureaucracy. The executive team decides we want to go do something, we do something. And so we right now have a product with a major auto brand that's running, which is a micro-targeted video product. And here's what we did. We built a massively scalable video rendering farm where we can take video assets and we can take all the offers in a feed, whether APR or cashback, and in a couple of hours we can render thousands of videos. And then we push it to our ad server automatically, and they start serving based on typically the zip or IP address. And all that happens seamlessly without ops team having to go traffic thousands of lines. And we report granularly, so we don't need that, basically the trafficking of lines to actually deliver at that level. So that's an example of like all the incumbents are struggling because they have years of legacy code, et cetera, et cetera. We're the cheetah because we can move very quickly and deliver stuff immediately.
You snuck a full case study into the animal question. I'm impressed. Well, Adrian, thank you so much for being here. Your company is called Aderize, and you justified your existence. Thank you.